Hello and good afternoon. My name is Andrei Saga, and today I will be giving my TOK presentation, and I will be discussing how the personal beliefs such as morals and ethics of people influence and limit various areas in the world such as the natural sciences and the arts. To begin with, I would like to start with my real life situation, which is the development of stem cell research. I remember learning about stem cells in biology class and was fascinated by how scientists could extract undifferentiated cells to cure diseases such as Alzheimer's and repair damaged tissue. Stem cells are a class of undifferentiated cells that are able to differentiate into a specialized cell types. Commonly, the stem cell comes from two main sources: embryos formed during the blastocyst phase of embryological development and from adult tissue such as the skin. I read an article from BBC about a little girl named Hannah whose life was saved in 2014 from leukemia by the use of stem cells extracted from the bone marrow, and was completely fascinated by the scientific advances that could be made using stem cells. This type of research led to many questions such as: what are the ethical concerns of this research, and should this type of research be allowed? What are the benefits and consequences of this research, and are the actions justified? And who decides if this is ethical or not? This led to the extraction of my ways and knowledge and areas of knowledge, which were my ways of knowledge are emotion, reason, faith, and beliefs, and my areas of knowledge are ethics and the natural science. This led also to the extraction of my TOK concepts, just as justification, bias, evidence, and being subjective and objective. The extraction of my real life situation led to my knowledge claim, which is: the stem cell controversy takes into consideration the ethics of destroying human embryos that have the potential to develop and become a human being. It involves the development and the use of these embryos. The personal beliefs of many researchers and people argue that it should not be allowed because of their morals. However, this type of research should be allowed because it can cure many diseases and lead to the development of new scientific discoveries. My knowledge claim led to my knowledge question, which is: to what extent does our beliefs justify and influence the development of scientific advances? My first claim to my knowledge question is that our beliefs influence the development of scientific advances because our personal knowledge and bias limit these advances. To begin, I would like to explain what is beliefs in the area of natural sciences. Scientists have personal convictions that can drive him or her to make new discoveries. Without a deep faith in an orderly universe, it would make no sense to look for explanations of why things happen as they do based upon generalizations. This means that our beliefs can often become an obstacle when it comes to scientific advances. Scientists and researchers' beliefs of what is ethical and or not, and what is good or bad, interferes and limits how much can be discovered or done in this area of science. Personal morals and values do influence and limit these findings. One example of how ethics and morals limit the scientific advances is brain sampling. Researchers would obtain brain cells just as a surgeon does when conducting a biopsy. After slightly sedating the patient, they would attach a head ring with 4 pins using local anesthesia. A surgeon would then make an incision a few millimeters wide, drill a small hole through the skull, and insert a needle to grab a tiny bit of tissue. A thin slice would be sufficient since you only needed a few micrograms of DNA. However, this type of research was rapidly prohibited because of the beliefs of people, and other researchers said that it was unethical and immoral. The personal bias and emotions of what people believed was right or wrong interfered with this experiment and limited the advances that could be made in human physiology. However, if this type of research could have continued and would not be obstructed by any type of personal beliefs, it could have answered many questions about how the brain works and help solve the mystery of mental disorders. However, you must also look at the other side when analyzing these types of questions, and my counterclaim is that our beliefs influence the development of scientific advances because our personal knowledge and bias do not limit these advances. To begin with, I would like to explain how emotion plays a role and does not limit the scientific advances that could be made. Emotion in the natural science is that scientists are passionate about what they do. Discoveries are driven by personal conviction and emotional energy. They may become emotionally attached to theories or trying to find a solution or discovery. Some may go against conventional morals and or religious beliefs for the sake of science. The morals and ethics of scientists and researchers do not interfere with the scientific advances. Most researchers leave their personal beliefs aside of what is good and bad for the sake of science and discoveries. So they would prefer to understand the world instead of being moral and ethical. An example of how personal beliefs such as morals and ethics do not limit scientific advances is in the Little Albert study. John B. Watson wanted to study and analyze irrational fear, and if it could be possible that a child could have a condition which made him or her have irrational fears. In order to accomplish the task of scaring a child, Watson took an 11-year-old baby and showed him a rat, a rabbit, and several other fuzzy things. Whenever little Albert tried to play with these objects, he was shown a loud noise that would be played in the background. This was repeated over and over again until Albert became scared of anything that was white and fuzzy, including blankets and beards. You can imagine poor Albert how he was terrified of Santa during Christmas time. But the personal beliefs of this specific researcher, Watson, did not limit his curiosity for human behavior and drove him to do many unethical and immoral studies in order to study irrational fear. But this led to the further understanding of human behavior and to many advances in psychology. But even though the Little Albert study suggests that our beliefs and personal bias does not influence or impede scientific advances, this is not accurate. These types of studies, although were proven to be very beneficial because it helped us understand irrational fears and human behavior, these types of studies can no longer be allowed or recreated due to its lack of ethics and morals because people believe it is wrong to do them. These beliefs are limiting scientific advances because no further research or studies of this type can be made, even though it may be very beneficial to society and to science. My conclusion to my knowledge question, which was to what extent does our beliefs justify and influence the development of scientific advances, is that our beliefs influence the development of scientific advances to a great extent. Our beliefs justify why we do or do not do something, and these beliefs become an obstacle in the area of science on which experiments or studies can or cannot be made. The implications of believing that this conclusion is true is that the implications of believing that our beliefs and morals influence and limit the development of scientific advances can lead to the idea that people must disregard the safety and health of others for the sake of science and must do experiments without their consent. It leads to the belief that the only way that scientific advances can be made is through unethical processes and methods that will damage other people's lives. There can be no ethical guidelines or limits when it comes to science. This is a very radical idea, and it is completely wrong because in the science department there must be boundaries and must be respect for others' lives. However, there are many perspectives and many people have different opinions and beliefs of what the definition of being ethical and what the definition of morality is. For example, there's ethical egoism. Ethical egoism is a theory of morality that states that right and wrong is determined by what is in your self-interest. It is immoral to act contrary to your self-interest. So, for example, if your self-interest is to find out about irrational fears, it would be immoral to not follow that self-interest. And another example is moral subjectivism, and this is another theory of morality that states that right and wrong is determined by what you, the subject, just happen to think or feel is right or wrong. The self-interest and the feelings of people change, and it is very subjective. There's no concrete definition of what is or what is not moral, and it can change from person to person. Ethics do not only limit the area of the natural science, but also limit art as well. The other day, I came across an article in CNN that read 10 works of art that shocked the world, and I was completely intrigued by it. There was an artwork called Piss Christ, which was a photograph taken by Andres Serrano, and it was a crucifix submerged in the artist's urine. I know, pretty rare to see this type of image. And this artwork was considered highly unethical for many Christians because the artist was disrespecting their religion and Jesus by submerging him in his own urine. The beliefs of other people are limiting the way the artists are able to express themselves just because they see it as immoral. The artwork did not receive any aid from public arts funding, and the French Catholic fundamentalists destroyed a print of the photo on display in Avignon. They are not only limiting the way artwork is supposed to be displayed, they are censoring images and destroying them because of their personal beliefs that it is wrong to show Christ in this way. Another way that ethics limit advances is in banning books. Another example is in language and literature. I remember in English reading Catcher in the Rye, and my teacher told us that this book had previously been banned in many schools and libraries, and it still is in some places because of the themes, plot, and message of the story. The personal beliefs of the public and critics banned the book Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger in many places. Their personal beliefs of the book was that it was unacceptable, obscene, blasphemous, negative, foul, and filthy, and undermines morality. The personal bias made it impossible for people to read the book. It became an obstacle and limited the themes and storylines books can publish in order to be considered appropriate for people to be able to read it. As you can see, the personal beliefs such as morals and ethics of people do influence and limit various areas in the world, such as the natural sciences and the arts. And these are my works cited. Thank you very much for your attention.